So if at the end of 10 days you've got a 1 to 1.5 gram rise, you know you're on the right line. You need not worry. Whatever you thought is correct, whatever you have given is correct. So I would do a CBC at the end of 10th day, not early. If I can see the patient clinically and seeing no that there is more pallor than before, I would do it earlier to see is the hemoglobin dropping, not for rise, but for drop. So the intention of doing CBC changes depending on what the clinical situation is. If you are doing it for a rise, wait for 10 days. If you are doing it for seeing a further drop on clinical grounds and you should have reasons for it, then you can do this. If at the end of the day you have not treated the underlying condition, you are not going to expect any rise. You are wasting time with iron and vitamins and what have you. So underlying cause is very important. So as clinicians, we have to identify the underlying cause. And of course, if after doing that also there is no rise, we know our diagnosis is wrong. Please revisit the diagnosis. Think of something else. Add B12, which is commonly not given. Physicians, clinicians, GPs tend to give iron very easily, but not B12. They don't realize that there is a combination with B12 deficiency. And this is for general practitioners who are not there over here, so there is no point. But I would say that for GPs, I made this algorithm so they can sit in the clinic and they can see this. I tell them that look at the CBC, look at all the three aspects. When it is anemia, identify whether it's hypomicro or whether it's macro. If it's hypomicro, look at the RBC count. If it's normal, it's more likely to be thalassemia. If it's going to be low, it's more likely to be iron deficient. This is for general practice. Simple thing to think of. So at least we know that they're giving the right medication and they're not unnecessarily treating patients as iron deficiency when they're thalassemia, and they're treat the right patient with the right therapy. And if it's macro, I don't want them to be giving iron deficiency treatment, they should be giving megaloblastic treatment. So you don't lose time. So I've been always proposing this kind of a simple algorithm, and this kind of algorithm is also going to be distributed amongst 20,000 gynecologists and obstetricians all over Maharashtra, where I've written for them on a simple algorithm of how to look at anemia of pregnancy. It's not part of this topic, but it is part for them because anemia is rampant in this state. So for us, CBC, it's a mirror to the bone marrow. Most important, and you are an extremely important part of that because we are totally dependent upon you as a quality control laboratory to give us an answer. 70-75% of my work is lab based. 20 to 25% is clinical. That means if I have to get a diagnosis, I cannot do it without a proper solutions. Sometimes you might have difficult slides. You can pick up the phone, look at the internet, call each other, speak to your senior pathologist, send slide across compounds with others. I don't know how many people do that. I don't know how many people do that. But it's worthwhile talking to each other and find out whether someone else has seen a similar case and see whether you can get a diagnosis. Because at the end of the day, patient should have a diagnosis. Whether it comes from your lab or the lab next door is irrelevant. For low platelets, I just want to tell you a few things. You know that low platelets can give rise to bleeding. Thinning of the endothelium takes place and can cause bleeding. And it's been known since 1870 that low platelets is associated with bleeding. You know that platelets are the primary platelet plug formation, very important. And way back in 1910, they realized that when you give allogenic platelets from someone else, it works and stops the bleeding. But they used to give whole blood because at that time they didn't know how to separate the platelets. But the vision, man, amazing what peers we've had in our field, and we're standing here and talking. And that's thanks to the work of these people who have such vision in the absence of technology. To just visualize and think that what it can be. It's amazing when you read history, especially blood transfusions and CBC. When you read the history, you realize that these people really spent time in their field. They ate, drank, and thought only in blood. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And of course, you get a platelet blood formation. We know that the first platelet transfusion was given in 1969-70, where actually 37 years ago they said keep it at 20 to 20 degrees centigrade. See that they kept shaking. That's exactly what we're doing. No change for the last 37 years. As far as low platelets are concerned, I think one of the important things is do it in ETT and citrate, like I told you before, because there are some things that you pick up. These are macro platelets, which are not counted by the machine because the size. Look at the size, almost half that of an RBC. So it's not going to be counted by the machine as a 2 to 20 centimeter cell. You have to count. This is where manual platelet counting. And of course, you get what is called as platelet satellitism, where the platelets are stuck to the neutrophil. This neutrophil is going to go, the platelets are not going to be counted. You get a falsely low value. This is an EDTA phenomenon. This is an in vivo phenomenon, and we call this as benign ethnic macrothrombocytopenia, BEP. We've identified, peers have identified 2 mutations. We can do it now, soon. I'm hoping by June we'll be able to pick this up in a much more scientific manner. We can do that. The Kashmiri Pandits northeast, from Calcutta onwards, the eastern part of UP, Jharkhand, the Gaundars down south, some of the Kannadigas, not the Kurgis, and some of in Maharashtra near the Sahyadris, they have this benign ethnic microbe thrombocytopenia. So in the history when they come and the slip comes to them with the name, low platelets, we keep this in mind. If it's a Bengali gentleman or a woman, keep it in mind that it could be a benign. Because a lot of unnecessary investigations are prevented by doing a good smear examination. And of course, the most important thing that we should never ever miss is clumps of platelets on a CBC. A very good center 2 months ago missed this. The patient got admitted, was given platelet transfusions, and got exposed to platelet. And when it was actually done in our institution, we picked up all these clumps and it was sad. So please don't let this happen to any patient. Exposure to blood could mean HIV, hepatitis B. No blood is ever safe. How much of investigations? We all know when you get samples for CBC for dengue fever, ask how many days of fever. 5th to 8th day is the lowest limit of platelets. By the 8th day of platelets. So you can on your own tell them that okay, if he has got no fever, and this is now fever is gone and it's 2 days, 3 days since fever is gone, he's bound to rise. We don't admit such people. And we look at a trend of platelets in such people, and we know 5 to 8 days of platelets are rising. In malaria, 70% of the time there is thrombocytopenia. So if you've got a thrombocytopenia with fever, don't forget to look for malaria, even if the MP has not been asked for. But look for it because it will add credence to your laboratory that you picked up something which you are not told about. That makes a lot of difference. Hantavirus we see where the difference between hantavirus thrombocytopenia and dengue thrombocytopenia is hantavirus has leukocytosis. All the dengues you must have seen are leukopenia. So if you've got a leukocytosis where there are no toxic changes, so it's not like a sepsis, no promyocytes, myelocytes, band forms, nothing like that, then please think of hantavirus because you might see some reactive lymphocytes.